Hello guys, this is Trinity Storm here and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to do 11th part of Naruto the Unknown Dojutsu. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Also, don't forget to follow me on my other social media handles. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
For what seemed like the first time in his life, Orochimaru felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Fear. Naruto's voice echoed throughout the area, and his dojutsu was activated, heightening his intimidating appearance. As yellow light slowly enveloped Snake Sanin's entire body, his gaze was fixed on him. Family. Kukakukuku, he evilly chuckled. I'll have to find out more later. In the meantime, Orochimaru kept his cool by clapping his hands a few times and smirking. Why don't we expand our little reunion, sensei? He asked, turning his gaze to his former teacher and ignoring the blonde. The two coffins next to the middle one opened, revealing two shinobi Hiruzen was familiar with. Jiraiya's jaw dropped to the rooftop, and Hiruzen's bodyguards gasped as they realized who they were up against. A tall man with tanned skin, dark eyes, and waist-length black hair styled in a center-parted fringe that followed the shape of his face emerged from the left. He wore a simple black suit overlaid with layers of dark red protective armor. The armor was divided into several different guards that covered his chest, thighs, shoulders, and forearms, and it was all topped off with traditional shinobi sandals from the previous era. Hashirama Senju was the first Hokage, Shodem Hokage, and the original God of Shinobi, Shinobi no Kami. A fair-skinned man with white, shaggy hair and dark-colored eyes emerged from the right coffin. He had 3 red marks on his face, one under each eye and one on his chin. He wore a black suit and armor, just like Hashirama Senju. Except for him, his protective guards were blue and were located on his chest, waist, shoulders, and upper arms. He also wore a distinctive white fur collar and 2 bands on each arm beneath his shoulder armor, as well as traditional shinobi sandals. He wore a hapori with the Konoha emblem instead of the usual forehead protector. Tobirama Senju, the second Hokage, Nidame Hokage, and another ninja who was also regarded as a god of shinobi, were involved. Edo Tensai? Asked Tobirama, examining his surroundings before looking at his own body, noticing signs that he was indeed an Edo Tensai, such as his own skin. He then fixed his gaze on Orochimaru, who was standing not far away from them but wearing an evil smile. My guess is that he must be the summoner. He mentally said, noting the Orochimaru's smile. Edo Tensai. Kushina thought as she looked around at the people in front of her. She immediately spoke up when she saw Hiruzen, because the last thing she remembered was slowly dying on the floor of a specific chamber in a specific location. She had to know what had happened to Naruto in the years that had passed since her death. Hiruzen-sensei, she said, attracting the attention of the elderly man. How long has it been since? I feel like I just got back from the village. 6 years, Kushina-chan, he answered. Many things have happened since your passing. He hesitated a little before saying the last word, but he did it anyway. How's Naruto coming along? She felt bad about having to leave her son with a huge burden on his hands back then, but she couldn't return from the damn mission that she took part in back then. He's actually doing well, Hiruzen said with a small smile. He's currently one of the most gifted genin in his batch, and he has a huge secret that you might be interested in learning about. Because I doubt even you, his mother, were aware of the secret. Not only that, but he also found love in the arms of a gentle and loving Hyuga. Kushina didn't pay attention to the last part, instead focusing on Naruto's secret. Secret? She inquired. What is the secret, and how come I am not aware of it? Did he keep it hidden from me? What exactly is it? She blurted out, her mind racing with questions, before Orochimaru's voice piped in, distracting them all. That's it, he hissed. Kushina Uzumaki, he said, asserting his dominance over her, drawing the attention of Hashirama and Tobirama. I want you to. Before he could finish his command, Naruto flew towards him and delivered a devastating punch to his jaw. Because the blonde's strength was enhanced by his own meteor jutsu, the impact sent the snake Sanin flying back, landing near the purple barrier that surrounded the entire rooftop. He was breathing heavily as the yellow light covering his body slowly faded, and he didn't even notice the wave of shock he instilled in Hiruzen's bodyguards and the 3 Edo Tensais. Tobirama. Hashirama spoke up right away. That was the Hiraishin? Thunder god in the sky, he inquired of his brother. Seeing the blonde boy rush towards Orochimaru brought back memories for the Shoden, and he looked exactly like Tobirama with that attack. After a few seconds of observing Naruto's figure, the white-haired man shook his head. No, he did not perform the Hiraishin. For 2 reasons. 1. He did not use a seal to approach that man, he paused, pointing to Orochimaru's body from a distance. And 2, if he did use the Hiraishin, he should have arrived at his destination in a flash, but it took him longer. However, the speed at which he was traveling earlier should not be overlooked, as I believe it was the result of a Kekkei Genkai, he explained, eliciting a stunned expression from his elder brother and a gasp from Kushina. Kekkei Genkai? Kushina asked, needing confirmation, to which the Nidaime nodded. Speaking of Kekkei Genkais, Jiraiya explained, speaking for the first time in minutes. Hashirama, Tobirama, and Kushina all looked at him, perplexed. He's got skills, and he's capable of doing some out-of-this-world things. In fact, he has already helped us win this invasion. Hold on, Tobirama interjected. What do you mean, invasion? He asked, making Hiruzen gulp. Instead, his teacher focused on Naruto's Kekkei Genkai. What the hell is going on, Hiruzen? You should begin explaining things to us right away, before our summoner awakens from his coma. Speaking of which, if he didn't need us for anything, he wouldn't have summoned us. Hiruzen, start talking. Both Hashirama and Kushina nodded, indicating that they agree with Tobirama's desire to be kept up to date on current events. Hiruzen sighed and looked down at the ground. So you weren't drawn in by young Naruto's abilities, huh? He muttered. Alright, if I explain things, Naruto can explain his secret later. He looked up again, this time at the blonde Uzumaki, who hasn't moved since punching Orochimaru earlier. Naruto! He exclaimed loudly, which piqued his interest. The Sandaime motioned for the boy to come to his side, and Naruto nodded without hesitation before leaping towards Hiruzen and Jiraiya, deactivating his dojutsu in the process. What do you need me for, Gigi? Inquired the youngster, rubbing the back of his neck. Yes, I want you to explain what's going on in our village right now to those 3 there, he said, motioning to the 3 Edo Tensais opposite them. Naruto's gaze followed where he was pointing and he noticed 3 people. Of course, he saw his mother, but she was the last thing on his mind at the time. He didn't have time for reunions or happy times. Kushina felt rejected and hurt by her own son after noticing Naruto's lack of joy upon seeing her again. Because you were the one who discovered their plans, I believe it is appropriate that you be the one to tell them what you discovered that evening. Are you serious? Naruto asked, and Hiruzen nodded. Naruto just shrugged and turned to face the 2 Hokages and his mother. Oh. K. All I have to say for now is that the Sand and Sound villages have joined forces to destroy Konoha. He declared, instantly widening Hashirama and his brother's eyes in surprise. What? Hashirama's voice echoed throughout the roof, prompting Hiruzen's bodyguards to cover their ears. Yeah, this invasion started right in the middle of the Chunin exams, the blonde explained. It happened during my match against Sanagakure's current Jinchuriki of the Ichibi, Gaara. Don't worry about that guy. I already took care of him, and he's out cold right now. he stated flatly, which caused Kushina's eyes to widen in both shock and confusion. I learned about the invasion plans about a week or two before the Chunin exams resumed in the arena. I overheard a ninja from Otto and Suna discussing possible counter-strategies. He concluded, not mentioning Kabuto or Baki in his explanation. What is the purpose? Tobirama inquired, closing his eyes in an attempt to calm himself. I don't know. Naruto scratched the back of his neck. Honestly, I think it's because of that bastard over there, he said, pointing to Orochimaru from afar. Hates Gigi so much that he'll do anything to get rid of anything that reminds him of Gigi. Aside from that, I'm not sure. He finished by fiddling with his hood before slipping both hands into his pockets. Hiruzen took a step forward. If it hadn't been for the determination of our shinobi, particularly Naruto, the number of casualties would have been much higher. For all we know, the village might not have been standing at all. His efforts since before the invasion began are proof that Konoha has produced strong children with the will of fire within them. He continued to explain, attempting to alleviate the situation by not exacerbating it. I couldn't believe it had come to this. Being betrayed by one's own supporters, said Hashirama, disappointedly looking down on the rooftop they were on. Tobirama sighed and crossed his arms, rolling his eyes. You're acting as if this has never happened before. If I recall correctly, the first Shinobi War began when one of our allies violated the treaty we made during the Biju distribution at the previous summit. Actually, the only summit, the Sandaime confessed to his teacher. I knew we couldn't put our faith in the other villages. Tobirama shook his head in dismay. What about Uzu? The Shodem inquired, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. I am certain that Mito village Chans will never betray us. A mental image of his wife, Mito Uzumaki, appeared. The elderly man bowed his head. Uzu Shiogakure has vanished. What? How? Tobirama lost his cool for a moment as both Hokages screamed. During the Second War, it was destroyed by the stone and mist. Mito. I'm sorry, Hashirama muttered in sorrow. How could you have allowed this to happen, Hiruzen? Tobirama chastised his ex-student. I thought I could entrust you with the future of the village, so I appointed you as Hokage. Our troops were dispersed, and our resources were limited, sensei. It was too late by the time one of our platoons arrived in the land of whirlpools. When our troops conducted a thorough investigation of their village, no casualties were discovered, according to our intelligence. There are rumors that the majority of the clan survived and split up to be safe, while others claim that the Uchiha were the ones who killed them all. Because their extraordinary fire abilities are something to be reckoned with, they would have no trouble erasing the traces of any murder. Those, however, are just rumors that have never been proven. Hirooki Uzumaki was the last commander of their forces still alive at the time, as they were vastly outnumbered by Iwa and Kiri, and he was last seen retreating into a cloud of smoke near the outskirts of the Uzu, and nobody knows what happened to him after that. Whether he's still alive or dead, Kushina-chan was one of the few people found alive and well at the site, and the only Uzumaki left in Konoha, if not the entire world, is her son, Naruto Uzumaki. That's the name of the boy, Tobirama said, staring at the blonde from head to toe. I must say, I am quite impressed that you have managed to repel this invasion for so long. Tell me something, boy, that earlier technique you used, I've never seen anything like it before, what is it? That white-haired man next to you said that's the secret you've been keeping. Could you elaborate? He finished, pointing to Jiraiya along the way. Naruto flushed. He immediately realized that the Nidaime was referring to his meteor because that was the only jutsu he had used since arriving. Despite the fact that everyone in the village was aware of his abilities, he was still hesitant to demonstrate them in response to a request. Are you kidding me? He exclaimed, trying to talk himself out of this. We're in the midst of an invasion here, and the village's fate is at stake. True, but a quick rundown wouldn't hurt anyone. A true shinobi must master multitasking. I hope you learned that in school. Yes, Naruto, I'd like to know about it as well. Exclaimed Hashirama, causing Naruto's face to fall. Damn it, I despise old people, he grumbled to himself before inhaling deeply. Okay. I'll explain everything. What followed was Naruto explaining his dojutsu, which was his Uchtengan. Tobirama demanded proof that there were techniques that used objects that were not from their planet, while Hashirama was left hanging after his explanation. Because Naruto liked to play with people, he used his meteor to fly to the Nidaime and stomp on his foot, earning him a smack to the head from Tobirama himself. Naruto's strange but unique yellow eyes took Hashirama by surprise. He has only ever witnessed the power of Madara Uchiha's dojutsu, his greatest rival and friend. As if the Sharingan's abilities weren't unique enough, Naruto's Uchtengan has a full set of unique jutsus that no one has seen before. Hashirama, as a well-respected powerful shinobi, knew when to call a ninja strong or weak. Naruto could have demonstrated his strength simply by showing his true eyes. Naruto, for his part, simply explained how he first awakened his untapped powers years ago and how he now trains almost every day with the help of a scroll. Of course, Naruto avoided mentioning the blood of the Rikudo Sennin inside him, as doing so would only complicate matters further, given that he was unaware of it himself. It's incredible to think that such eyes exist in this world. Tobirama continued, still staring into Naruto's eyes because this was the first and possibly last time he'd heard of something like this. Dojutsus are not to be taken lightly in the ninja world, because each one, including the Sharingan and Byakugan, is unique in its own right. Naruto's Uchtengan, on the other hand, may be the most unusual yet because it was involved with heavenly bodies outside of their planet. You are unique, Naruto Uzumaki. Those eyes of yours are extraordinary. Haha, Tobirama, what did I always say back then? Hashirama continued, a wide grin on his face as he patted his brother on the shoulder. The next generation of shinobi will outperform us. And this is the correct response. Who knows, his eyes could be even more powerful than mine. If we have to fight them today, I'd like to face off against young Naruto. He has a lot of potential. Tobirama turned away from him and focused on Naruto. Naruto, please tell me. What is your objective? What do you want to be when you grow up? He inquired. Oh. Now that you've asked, my ambition is to surpass all previous Hokages and become the best. I want to be Hokage so that I can protect not only my home, but also those I care about. I'm going to be the greatest Hokage ever. It's true. He smiled and gave a thumbs up. Tobirama laughed softly. Yes, he has potential. He thought to himself as he felt a familiar chakra signature within the boy. Naruto? He exclaimed. Is there any chance you're the Kyuubi's current Jinchuriki? He asked bluntly. Tobirama. Sneered Hashirama. That's a strange question. What a jerk. Of course I am. Naruto declared proudly with a smile, causing Hashirama's jaw to drop to the floor and Kushina's eyes to widen. Do you understand how to harness its power? Have you mastered it? He persisted, wanting to know every detail about how powerful the boy was in comparison to them. Actually, Kurama and I are friends. Hashirama nearly passed out at that statement, but Tobirama caught him by the shoulder. The latter maintained a stoic expression, wondering how the blonde became friends with a Biju. Kushina, on the other hand, was overjoyed to learn that Naruto is friends with Kurama, the one creature she considered a friend during her lifetime. Friends? How did you become friends with a Biju? No less with the Kyuubi. He inquired, his interest in the blonde Uzumaki growing. Not only did he have a mysterious dojutsu that only he was aware of at the time, but he was also friends with the Nine Tails? How bizarre could the boy possibly become? He's actually a really nice guy. Naruto exclaimed joyfully. Don't address me as if I'm a human. Kurama screamed with a tick mark from inside his head. I'm more than a small and frail human like you, Kit. Oh, shut up. I know you love me too. He teased, and Kurama simply growled in annoyance before returning to his observation of what was going on outside his body. If you think he's a mindless beast who only knows destruction and mayhem, you're mistaken. I won't deny that he was that way back then, but he's changed. If he were here right now, he would not destroy the village like he did back then. I know it's difficult to believe, but, when he heard a very familiar voice, he was abruptly cut off from his statement. Naruto. Kushina softly called out, speaking for the first time since talking to Hiruzen earlier, causing the boy mentioned to pale. It had been a long time since she had been heard. Her sound. The voice of the last person he ever considered a family member. Sure, Jiraiya and Hiruzen acted as if Naruto were their own flesh and blood, but she was the one he missed the most because she was his mother. The redhead ignored his terrified expression and began slowly approaching him. Hiruzen's bodyguards began to draw kunais in case she tried something. After all, the enemy had basically reincarnated her as a zombie, and who knows if she would attack or not. Kushina raised both her hands and gave an innocent look as a sign of peace, indicating that she has no plans. When the four resisted, the Sandaime turned to them and motioned for them to lower their weapons. Kushina resumed her slow walk towards her son after they had finished. I'm sorry if I abandoned you, Naruto, she continued. I apologize for leaving you all alone at the time. I wish I could change the past and change my fate so that we could be together again, but life is difficult at times. I regretted my decision to go on that mission even more when I saw you earlier, because I left you to be threatened and attacked by your fellow villagers. She extended both of her arms in an attempt to hug Naruto after being separated from him for so long. She would have cried if she was still alive. But with everything you've just said, I can't help but be proud of you, Naruto. You've become so much like your father. He was strong as well, and he wanted to be the Hokage as well. You've become friends with Kurama as well, and you've grown so much. So let me just say this as your mother, I love you, my son. She then reached out for him to pull him into her embrace, but the blonde took a step. Everyone on the rooftop was taken aback by what Naruto had just done. Did he avoid a hug from his mother? Nobody dared to speak because they were all too stunned by the scene. Surprisingly, the woman was the one who emerged from her shock first. Wrong, what's my son? She asked, terrified. Fear that Naruto had for her. Are you scared of me? Please do not. Naruto, I'm still your mother. Uzumaki Kushina here. She exclaimed, her voice trembling with fear. Kushina breathed a sigh of relief as the blonde shook his head. Though she was perplexed as to why Naruto would avoid her. She finally realized it after a few moments of thought. Naruto is mad at me, she thought to herself. That would not come as a surprise. After all, she never told him the truth about her mission 6 years ago. The mission where she was killed. Hiruzen appointed her captain of a Chunin team at the time, and their mission was to travel to Hoshigakure, hidden village in the stars, and assist in the evacuation of the villagers there. An unknown hooded individual who happened to pass by the village predicted that a meteor from space would crash into their location at that time. Normally, people would suspect him, but his voice was that of an elderly man, so they had no choice but to listen. Look at the stars, young ones. In my opinion, they are all gifts to us. Only a few dare to turn against us, and when they do, they fall. People would either die or witness the birth of a new gift to the world in 3 weeks. People obviously wondered what the heck he was talking about, but thanks to a few of the most intelligent people present, they deduced that the old man was talking about meteoroids in space, which he referred to as shooting, or falling, stars. Soon after, they realized he was warning them about a meteor that was about to crash into the land. During that time, the Hoshikage sent a letter to Konoha requesting assistance in evacuating the entire village as well as acting as protectors to the villagers from the dangers of the open world because they aren't adept at ninjutsu and the like. When Hiruzen received the letter, he wondered why they would need help doing so because the village was so small in comparison to Konoha, but he eventually decided to send a team there after remembering what happened the last time he saw a meteor about to crash. He was certain the mission would be a success because the famous red-hot habanero was leading the team he sent, or so he thought. Son, are you angry with me? She asked gently. Is this about what happened to me at the time? When did I die? She struggled to say that last word, knowing it would elicit a reaction from the blonde. Naruto clenched his fists and gazed down at the rooftop, his hair covering the majority of his face, including his eyes. He was angry, as much as he hated to admit it. Not because his mother wanted to go on that mission, but because she didn't tell him the truth about what her mission was. Naruto learned about Kushina's mission that day about a week before the semifinals of the third phase of the exams, thanks to Mika's telepathic ability to look inside Hiruzen's memories. While she was initially opposed to Naruto's plan to infiltrate another person's mind, she understood his situation after he stated that he only wanted to know the truth about his mother. Mika informed him that the meteor did crash, though not directly in the village, and that Kushina was last seen carrying a child away from the village before being engulfed by a small earthquake caused by the large rock crashing. Her body was discovered about 50 yards from the village 2 days later, and according to the medics there, she died of suffocation due to a lack of clean air. That's when Kurama decided to step in on behalf of his former host. He told both Mika and Naruto that he witnessed Kushina's death from a stab wound on her back when her body was returned to Konoha. According to him, it was a horrible memory and he didn't want to talk about it, but he will because he, too, wanted to learn the truth about his first friend's death. The Phoenix ignored him and continued explaining. Still researching Sandame's memories, she stated that Hiruzen did not believe Hoshigaku's claims that the redhead died of simple suffocation, and that he was still trying to solve that mystery until now. He was certain Kushina died as a result of the stab wound found on her back, but to avoid suspicion, he changed the cause of death to suffocation. Still, that wasn't enough to keep him from telling Naruto what he thought. He told the blonde at the time that a group of S-class ninjas kidnapped and tortured her before killing her. For his own safety, he didn't tell Naruto who they were. This didn't stop Naruto from seeking the truth, and he now knows that the group he believes murdered his mother was known as Akatsuki. Mika didn't want to look into it because it was too horrible to bear, in her words. She did tell Naruto that the Akatsuki is a truly evil organization, with every member fighting for the same goal. It didn't matter what it was because it wasn't important. She also told him that having his own mother die at the hands of such an organization is a cruel and ruthless fate, which made Naruto cry rivers of tears at the time. Naruto made his decision after recalling his original intention. He had Mika examine the old man's mind in order to learn the truth. Because of too many missed points, the Sandame did not believe the Hoshigakure medics, but it was never confirmed whether Hiruzen's theory was correct as well. It was just his own conclusion. Now that his mother was in front of him, perhaps this was his chance. Even though she is no longer alive, she can still tell him what he needs to know. He just wanted to know what happened, whether she was captured and eventually killed by the Akatsuki. He won't be able to truly sleep well at night if he doesn't because nightmares of Kushina occasionally disrupt his peaceful sleep. Maybe if he does, a huge boulder will be lifted from his own heart and he will be able to move on. After all, he isn't a kami, so he can't change what happened, right? What has been done is done. Nothing could bring Kushina back, but hearing the truth from his mother's own lips is enough for him. He steeled himself and took a deep breath with newfound courage. Yes. He exhaled, causing a huge wave of angst and sorrow to wash over his mother, who was looking down in sorrow. But I'm not mad at you for going on that mission, Ka-san, he continued, prompting Kushina to raise her head, looking at Naruto with confusion and surprise. What? She inquired, unsure if what she had overheard was true. You've got her now, Kurama observed. The blonde looked up at her, his eyes widening as if he was about to cry. I'm not mad at you because of the mission, he said again. I'm furious because you didn't tell me what you were up to during that mission. Naruto, you were still a child at the time, you wouldn't understand what I was going through, she tried to defend herself. Whatever, you should have told me about it. Perhaps it would have been less painful than learning that your mother had died unexpectedly while on a mission. He retorted, frowning and looking to the side. Don't bother explaining what you did. I'm already aware of the mission. Hoshigakure, the meteor, Gigi's decision to make you captain of your squad, and the man who first warned that village, he stated unequivocally. He paused for a moment to allow Kushina, Hiruzen, and Jiraiya to respond freely to what he was saying. He cut Kushina off when he saw she was about to speak again. Enough already. Please, no more lies. I'm tired of all the deceptions. Enough with the games, Gigi, Ka-san, Ero Senin. I want the truth. Why did you keep it hidden from me? Why didn't you tell me the whole truth? Why do you have to keep things from me all the time? Do you think I'm too frail to hear the truth? I've matured. I'm no longer a child. Kushina was taken aback by Naruto's sudden outburst. She couldn't, however, speak out against it. She can no longer defend herself because everything Naruto said is simply true. She didn't tell him why she left, and she also kept his father's identity a secret. Naruto had no idea who his father was until now, and Kushina was one of those who agreed with the decision not to inform him of his true family. She was dead now, and she couldn't change anything she did back then to make it the right thing to do. And the least she could do right now is confront her son about what he wanted to know before it was too late. Who knows how long she will remain in this world before returning to the afterlife. She might as well spend what little time she has left doing the right thing. The redhead rubbed her elbows as she crossed her arms. She sighed heavily before speaking up. Now, Naruto. I'm about to tell you what happened to me on that particular day. Please bear with me. Kushina's point of view 6 years ago. My vision was welcomed by pitch-black darkness. I moved my head to see if there was any light source nearby, but it was so dark that I couldn't see anything. Except for the cold floor and my aching stomach growling in hunger, I couldn't feel anything. So, who can blame me? I had my last meal with my squad the day before the meteor crashed in the village. This darkness is also not helping me. Okay, as much as I hate to admit it, I was afraid of the dark as a child. Every night, I had to sleep with a small light on to avoid having nightmares. That was prior to my friendship with Kurama. I was no longer afraid when I realized I wasn't alone and that he was by my side. He's no longer with me. He's now with Naruto, and I'm sure my son will need him even more than I did. My husband is not with me. He is deceased and will not return. I'm completely alone. Wait a minute. Did I just make fun of myself? For a brief moment, I thought my childhood fear of the dark had returned. No, I must be strong. I'm not going to let myself be afraid any longer. What in the world do you think I am? Allowing myself to be afraid would be bad for my image, especially at this time. My villagers look up to me as a role model, and I should be one as well. But, wait. Where am I? That seemed to silence my optimistic side. Most likely because it is correct. I recall returning a young boy named Hoshizaki Ryoto to his family on the outskirts of Hoshigakure. Wait a minute. I was about to return to my squad and write a report about how successful our mission was when I blacked out. What happened? Do you intend to speak with her today? Someone else will handle it for me. Kakuzu, why are you still here? If I remember correctly, you should be out on a mission with Hidan today. I'm doing it on my own. I don't need his assistance. I'll return in 2 days. You and Hidan are supposed to be a team. If you keep doing this, our leader will be upset with you. Zetsu, you don't tell me what to do. Just shut up and go about your business. I'm going. What am I doing? What were those people saying? Zetsu? Kakuzu? What the hell are they? Were they referring to me? I thought there were 2 of them? And one of them wanted to talk to me. Okay, I'll concentrate now. I believe I can surprise whoever that was when he comes here. I need to figure out where I am and who has taken me. And once I'm out of here, I'll have to find my squad and tell them what I've been going through. When I felt metal shackles on my hands, I tried to get up on my feet, but I was pulled down instead. This isn't looking good. I can't even move my arms. Instead of moving my feet, I tried to kick the shackles off, but I noticed that my feet were also restrained. What the hell am I doing? Who the hell put me in this situation? Oh no, someone is about to come to where I am. I can't make a sound, so I could pretend to be unconscious. Good idea, yeah, I could do that. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to figure out where I am. Better act quickly. Normal point of view. Zetsu entered the chamber where Kushina was being held. Pain, the Akatsuki's leader, sent him, Itachi, and Hidan on a mission to capture the famed red-hot habanero of Konoha and interrogate him about who was the new Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. After all, she was the previous Kyuubi host, so it's not surprising that she knew who the new one was. It wasn't directly Pain's orders to add Itachi, regarded as one of the Akatsuki's strongest, to that mission, but Kushina Uzumaki is no ordinary Konoha kunoichi. All who have dared to confront her have succumbed to her titanic strength and sealing abilities, so it was best to bring Itachi along to restrain and capture her. They were lucky that day because she didn't play hard to get, falling right into their trap after she went to a family carrying a small child in her arms, presumably returning the boy. Hidan was already licking his lips in delight and was about to charge head-on when Itachi intervened. He stated that before resorting to violent measures, he should try to put her in genjutsu. Zetsu agreed, and although the sadistic Hidan didn't like it, he eventually agreed. Maybe it was bad luck because as soon as the genjutsu hit her head, she collapsed unconscious to the ground. Although they were perplexed by how simple it was, they didn't bother trying to figure out why because the mission was a success. They took her to their headquarters and locked her in a chamber separate from the other prisoners they had at the time. They had to wait for her to wake up so they could get the information they needed from her. Zetsu wasn't known for his patience, and he needed the information right away. He'll do whatever it takes to get the redhead to talk. Otherwise, she'll be useless to them, and there's a good chance they'll kill her afterwards to keep her mouth shut. When he arrived at her chamber door, he paused for a moment to listen for any suspicious noises coming from within. If there is, it means Kushina is awake and just waiting for someone to appear. He went inside after a few moments of silence because he hadn't heard anything. He noticed her on the floor, motionless but breathing. He approached her figure to see if she had awakened yet. If she did, he'd take her to Itachi for questioning, even if he had to drag her there. If she wasn't awake yet, he'd simply return at a later time. After a few seconds, Zetsu was convinced that Kushina was still sleeping. However, just as he was about to get back on his feet, the woman who was lying, unconscious, on the floor stood up and drew her right arm back to support herself on her knees. Zetsu's eyes widened briefly before he decided to feign shock and fear with a small gasp. "Suck on this, you asshole!" She screamed, channeling her chakra to her arm before punching the strange black and white man in front of her to oblivion. But before she could even reach Zetsu, she felt her strength fading as she fell to the ground, feeling as if she had lost a ton of her own strength. Zetsu shook his head playfully with a smirk on his face as the redhead coughed violently. "Tisk, tisk, tisk, you shouldn't have done that," Zetsu said in his usual caustic tone. Zetsu OOC warning. Those chains that bind you suffocate your chakra. You can't do anything with your chakra as long as you're in them, which means you have no chance of getting out. He leaned in closer and cupped Kushina's chin before raising her head to look at him. "Kushina Uzumaki." Kushina's throat let out a low growl. "How do you know who I am?" she demanded, her voice threatening. Zetsu simply ignored her harsh tone and didn't bother answering her question. "Oh, because we all know everything about you. Because I'm the intel guy in our organization, my job is to find out information about the people we capture, imprison, or kill." He responded without hesitation. "What exactly do you expect from me? What am I doing?" Zetsu remained silent for a few seconds. "Huh? Get back to me." Her sudden outburst caused Zetsu to chuckle evilly, sending shivers down her spine despite her refusal to admit it. The plant-like creature leaned in even closer, his mouth now next to her ear. "Let's just say our leader wants an audience with you," he said quietly, before returning his head to their original distance. "As for where you are, all I can say right now is that you are in a situation from which there is no way out. You're stuck in this place for the rest of your life." He finished in a childish tone. "You'll have no family to return home for." He only whispered out that last part, but it didn't escape Kushina's ears. Kushina spat on Zetsu's face after hearing the insult directed at her family, and the latter clicked his tongue in disappointment at the redhead's sudden action. "Try mentioning my family again, and you'll see more than that," she threatened, her breathing worsening. "Just wait. You say I don't have any hope? We'll see what happens," she continued in a smug tone, which Zetsu couldn't help but laugh at. "What are you laughing at?" she exclaimed, as if drunk. "Oh, I see. Just wait, you plant bitch," she raged, after noticing the teeth-like thing that resembled Zetsu's collar. "You'll be the first person to get an ass beating from me when I get out of here." Zetsu's expression changed from sarcastically chuckling to a soft glare that expressed his displeasure with the redhead at the time. Zetsu's hand moved from her chin to her hair, yanking on it hard enough to cause Kushina to scream in pain. Brave words. From a woman on the verge of death. He locked his gaze on her, and it was clear that Kushina was losing the mental game right now. "There is no way out," he said again. "And the bottom line is, just give up and stop resisting." He then stood up and approached her from behind, grabbing her by the neck. She wasn't prepared for that, so she began to suffocate from the lack of air before she felt herself being released from the chains and shackles that were holding her down. She would have used this opportunity to flee if it hadn't been for Zetsu's hand on her neck. His grip on her was so tight that her skin began to turn blue. She felt herself being dragged out of the room because she was completely defenseless, but she didn't have the strength to look up to see where she was or fight back with a few punches of her own. Her consciousness was fading by the second, and her vision was becoming increasingly blurry. However, before she could completely pass out, she felt herself lifted off the floor as soon as her feet left it. She opened her eyes with all the strength she had left and saw that she was being lifted above the floor. Before she knew it, Zetsu threw her away, and because she had almost no strength left, she acted like a ragdoll in midair before landing at the feet of another person. She slowly opened her eyes and noticed that she had her back to this new person. Because Zetsu had literally choked her for nearly a minute, she couldn't help but cough and beat her chest with her fist to regain control of her breathing. She got up on all fours and crawled away from the person she was facing away from after a few more coughing fits. She turned her head around and looked up after a significant distance to see who she had bumped into midair while being thrown. Her eyes widened in shock, causing her to lose strength in her own arms and fall back to the floor, unable to take her gaze away from the person in front of her. It had to be Itachi Uchiha, the eldest son of her best friend, Makoto Uchiha, and the man accused of murdering his entire clan. She couldn't even open her mouth to form words. Itachi, on the other hand, had an emotionless expression on his face as he gazed at the redhead with his Sharingan eyes. The only thing on her mind at the time was the realization that this was where Itachi had gone after leaving Konoha. He was branded as an S-class criminal for the massacre of the Uchiha clan and becoming a missing nin the last time she heard, and seeing him right now was too much of a shock for her, especially since she was considered his own godmother when he was born. "What are you looking forward to, Itachi-san?" Zetsu spoke up from behind Kushina, watching how the two of them interacted. "Use your Sharingan on her right now to get the information we need about the Kyuubi's new Jinchuriki." Pain is becoming increasingly severe. Itachi was already shaking his head with his eyes closed, indicating his refusal, before he could even continue. "Is there any reason why you shouldn't do as you're told?" The Uchiha opened his eyes and stared at Zetsu, emotionless. "I've met this woman before, and believe me when I say that the name, Uzumaki Kushina, is not to be taken lightly. I recall her easily breaking through my illusions during our last encounter, so I had no choice but to use my Tsukuyomi to keep her at bay. Using genjutsus on her now won't work because I can tell she still has a lot of chakra in her reserves. Don't even think about asking me to use my Tsukuyomi. I used it about a week ago, and the best time to use it again would be 2 weeks from now." He directed his index finger at Kushina. "As much as I hate to say it, I believe Pain should be the one to extract the information from her." With what Itachi had just said, Kushina was wide-eyed and her mouth was open. Some parts of his explanation were correct, while others were incorrect. Yes, he was correct that she is a woman to be taken seriously, and yes, she still has a lot of chakra in her reserves. But Itachi was incorrect in claiming that they had previously met and fought because this is the first time she has seen the Uchiha since he left the village. Even if he disguised himself in their first battle, she would have detected her chakra signature and deduced who he was earlier. This was, however, the first time she had felt her chakra. As a result, she couldn't help but wonder if Itachi did it on purpose, because if he did, she might have an ally in the Uchiha. "Why don't you just let me deal with her?" A slightly insane voice spoke up from behind the redhead. She didn't turn around to see who it was because she didn't want to push her luck, instead focusing on Itachi. She has no idea who spoke, but it was none other than Hidan, the most sadistic member of the Akatsuki who was a firm believer in the god, Jashin. His most notable ability was immortality, which allowed him to survive fatal injuries with no real damage. His preferred weapon is a 3-pronged scythe that appears to be too large for his stature, making him a slow attacker. His Akatsuki partner was Kakuzu, and they were known as the Immortal Team. "I'll make sure she suffers a lot of pain," Hidan said, his voice sending shivers down Kushina's spine. "After all, Lord Jashin needs a sacrifice right now," he continued, grabbing his scythe and licking the tip of the top blade as he smiled sadistically at the redhead's weakened state. Zetsu had already reached out an arm to stop him before he could take another step towards her. "Itachi-san is correct, Hidan," Zetsu said, causing Hidan to frown slightly. "If his genjutsus doesn't work against her, we'll have to hand her over to Pain. He'll know how to get the information we require from her. If we let you do it, you might end up killing her instead, and we need her alive to get the Kyuubi Jinchuriki information. Understand?" "Fine, TCH." Hidan scoffed and walked away, disappointed that he hadn't been able to participate in any action for the day. Can't a man have fun? After watching Hidan leave, Itachi took a step forward and reached for Kushina's neck. "Allow me to deliver her to Pain. Maybe along the way I'll be able to Zetsu cut him off before he could finish his explanation by delivering a strong chop to the redhead's nape, knocking her out instantly before slumping her over on his shoulder. "There's no need for that, Itachi-san," Zetsu said, looking at Uchiha with emotionless eyes and a stern voice. "Just prepare for more orders from Pain, I'll deliver this one," he said, pointing to Kushina's unconscious figure on his shoulder. "I'm looking forward to torturing this woman, and I'll be watching Pain to see how he extracts the information she knew from her. Of course, he could use the Jade Mosh, demon statue, to get her chakra later, but that is up to him." Itachi's face paled slightly when he mentioned the demonic statue, which was noticed. "Is there a problem, Itachi-san?" The Uchiha quickly recovered from his minor shock and lowered his head so that his hair covered his eyes. "It's nothing. Just a bad memory," he grumbled as he walked past Zetsu. "You better get going, Uzumaki Kushina might wake up at any moment." Zetsu raised an eyebrow at Uchiha's sudden reaction before shrugging it off, thinking it was nothing. He had a more important task to complete. Kushina was awakened by the sensation of something cold behind her. She slowly opened her eyes to find a massive statue in front of her, bigger than Kurama had ever been when he was out in the open. It had 9 eyes, but they were all closed. Shackles bound the statue's wrists and ankles, and its mouth was open, with 4 chains protruding from it. Her eyes followed where the chains were connected because they had a purple aura to them. Her eyes widened as she noticed the 4 chains tying all of her limbs to the wall behind her. She tried moving her arms, but just like in the previous chamber, she couldn't do anything. She eventually gave up trying to escape when he heard a voice getting louder by the second and closer to where she was. "How are things going? The sensation of pain? Does it make you happy? Or not?" the voice said, switching from loud to soft with each word, which irritated the redhead to some extent. "Demonstrate yourself. If you don't fucking show up, I'll pound you to death." Kushina threatened while also attempting to be frightening, which was failing because she had very little strength left. "I see you've awoken from your slumber," an orange-haired man said as he approached Kushina. "At long last, we can get down to business." The man had 6 piercings, including a metal bar in each of his ears, 3 studs on the side of his upper nose, and 1 spike stud on each end of his bottom lip. On each of his wrists, he had 3 piercings. He appeared to be in his early 20s or 30s, with an emotionless face. His eyes were violet in color, with ripples on the cornea, indicating that he was a dojutsu practitioner. "Kushina Uzumaki. Who the hell are you?" she asked, panting heavily, not feeling her own chakra being drained into the statue in front of her. "I am Pain," the man replied bluntly, causing Kushina to look at him in confusion. "What kind of name is that, Pain? I don't have time to talk to you, Uzumaki Kushina," he said as he drew a black receiver from his wrist and walked closer. Kushina's eyes narrowed when she saw the black rod he was holding before Pain pointed the sharp blade at her throat, causing her to stick her head against the wall to avoid the black receiver, but this only exposed her neck further. "If you want to live, we, the Akatsuki, expect you to cooperate. If you don't, you die. That's all there is to it. So, are you going to collaborate with me or not? What do you expect from me?" she asked, taking deep breaths in between her words, now feeling her chakra draining from her, oblivious to the fact that it was the statue doing it to her. "We just want to know who the new Kyuubi Jinchuriki is," he said, widening Kushina's eyes. "Because you were the last known host of the 9 Tails, we believe you might know who the new one is. If you do not answer me truthfully, you will die after I extract the truth from you. If you tell me what you know, we'll send you on your way. After all we need from you is information. We don't need or want to eliminate you. However, if you do not agree to my terms, you will be held accountable." As she stared at the orange-haired man in front of him, the redhead's widened eyes became slits. I'm going to believe that lie like hell. What gives you the impression that I'll believe your words? You'll kill me as soon as you get your little piece of information. When you let me out of this hellhole, you won't even let me run 2 yards. I'd rather die than believe your lies. Pain then yanked the black receiver from her neck and tossed it to the ground, catching her off guard with his unexpected action. He leaned in closer to her right ear and whispered softly. I show mercy to those I consider to be family, Kushina-san. He explained, making the redhead furrow her brows in confusion as he returned to his original location, leaving her to ponder what he had just said to her. Family? She asked herself. What is he on about? Except for Naruto and Minato, I have no family. It then occurred to her that he had not addressed her by her family name during his last statement to her. Are you an Uzumaki? She inquired of Pain. How did you become one and survive the massacre? Did you leave Uzushiogakure first? She continued, her interest piqued. If you cooperate with me, I'll tell you everything you want to know, he said to the redhead. This is your final chance. I will not ask you again. Tell me what you know about the new Kyuubi Jinchuriki, and I'll respond with answers. You'll be free to return to your village, and we may cross paths again as enemies in the future. Uzumaki Kushina, if you do not tell me the truth, you will die. The Jeed Mosh is hungry for chakra, and I will gladly feed it to it. You'll never be able to see your home again if you try anything against me right now. After what he said, Kushina looked down at the ground. She had forgotten what he wanted earlier because the hypothesis that Pain as an Uzumaki had piqued her interest. She was now in a difficult situation. She had to choose between 2 life-altering options. If she cooperates with Pain, she will endanger her own son Naruto, the current Jinchuriki of Kurama. If he died as a result of their actions, it will be her fault. However, according to Pain, she will be allowed to return to Konoha, and if she does, she will be able to warn Hiruzen of the Akatsuki's possible plans, possibly preventing a war from breaking out. However, she had her own doubts about whether the orange-haired man was telling the truth. Would he truly let her go just because she was family to him? He has the ability to kill her the moment she tells him about Naruto, and as a result, the Akatsuki wins in 2 ways. He'll kill her if she doesn't cooperate with Pain. If she dies, Naruto will no longer have someone to call a mother, and she will leave him with a burden to bear. But there was one bright spot in all of this. If she doesn't tell Pain that Naruto is the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, he'll be safe from the Akatsuki until he's old enough to defend himself and his village. She finally made her decision after a full minute of deliberation. A decision in which she could win both ways. She sighed heavily and feigned tears as she looked up at Pain, who still had an emotionless expression on his face. Okay, I give up. I'll tell you everything you want to know. Her expression then changed to one of seriousness. But can you at the very least free me from these shackles? When I feel my own chakra being drained from me, I don't think I can go much longer. Pain paused for a few moments before closing his eyes and walking closer to her. Remember my warning, he said as she undid the chains that bound her arms and legs. She slumped forward before landing on her hands and knees, nearly collapsing due to the length of time she had been chained to the statue. Her plan required all of the chakra she could muster, and it was fortunate for her that she still had about half of her reserves available. She slowly regained her breath and rose to one knee, her gaze fixed on the floor. Pain simply stared at her before proceeding with his business. Well? I'm standing by. Who is Uzumaki Kushina, the Jinchuriki of the 9 Tails? As her chakra began to flare off her, the redhead clenched her fists as tightly as she could. Pain then noticed that she was developing a reddish aura around her entire body. Who? She mumbled, her Konoha forehead protector slipping to the floor. In hell. Her head snapped up to look up at the orange-haired man, and Paine's brows rose, sensing the murderous intent in her eyes. "Do you think I'm?" she screamed, delivering a powerful punch to Paine's stomach with all of her strength. Paine's eyes widened in surprise before being blown away by Kushina's attack, which sent him flying to the far side of the chamber, crashing to the wall and leaving a massive crater in its wake. She fell to her knees again, taking deep breaths, due to the amount of chakra she put into that punch. She smirked as she saw Paine's figure on the other side of the room and realized her plan had worked. "Now to just get out of here," she said to herself, picking up her forehead protector from the floor and gripping it tightly as she turned the other way. After a few more rounds of catching her breath, she began jogging while looking in various directions, hoping to find a way to escape. She can't run to an exit because she has so little chakra left. She didn't get the nickname, the Red Hot Habanero, for nothing, as she explained how she still had the energy to jog instead of simply walk. "Just wait, Naruto," she said, an image of Naruto flashing through her mind. "I'm coming home and I'm going to buy you all the ramen you want. I won't die here because I won't be able to forgive myself if I let you spend the rest of your childhood without me. I'm aware of how the villagers treat you, and once they realize I'm gone, they'll be free to do whatever they want to you. I'm not going to let that happen, my son. As your mother, I must look after you until you are old enough to look after yourself. I promised Minato that I'd look after you no matter what, and I'm not going to let that go to waste. Because Naruto. Your Ka-san adores you." She was interrupted in her thoughts when the sound of something being pierced rang throughout the chamber, which didn't go unnoticed by her acute hearing. She abruptly stopped jogging and began frantically looking in all directions, as the piercing sound she had just heard sent shivers up her spine. She didn't notice anything until she felt something trickling down the side of her mouth. She wiped the liquid dripping down her chin with her right hand before looking at what it was. Her brow furrowed, and her eyes widened as she realized it was blood. Her own blood. It took a few seconds for it to sink in completely. Her eyes slowly moved downward, causing her head to follow. Her mouth dropped open in disbelief at the black receiver that was impaling her through her stomach. She slowly turned her head, only to see Pain standing behind her, his right arm outstretched. He still had the emotionless expression on his face, and all evidence of him being punched by Kushina had vanished. He appeared to have fully recovered from a serious injury. The redhead realized it when Pain shot the black rod through her, making the piercing sound she had heard earlier. Yes, she was a complete moron at critical moments. Kushina dropped to her knees as she spat out a handful of blood, her strength slowly fading. After a few moments, she dropped completely onto her stomach, causing the black receiver that was passing through her to slowly push out due to contact with the floor. She could no longer feel the pain of the rod being pulled out. No, her head was simply turned to the right, her eyes still wide after all that. Her breathing was becoming increasingly slow as she felt herself losing strength while holding the forehead protector in her right hand. "I guess this is it for me," she thought to herself, recalling the high points of her life. "I shouldn't have underestimated him. But maybe that's always been one of my weaknesses." Her right hand then unfolded, completely losing strength, revealing the forehead protector she was holding. "Take care of yourself, Naruto. And forgive me for abandoning you, but there are times when you need to be able to do things on your own. I love you so much, my son." Her breathing then abruptly stopped. "I warned you," Pain said as he lowered his right arm from where he stood. "A shame. I'd have let you go anyway." He continued, approaching Kushina's body on the floor. "I'm coming, Minato," she said as her eyes closed but did not open again, effectively ending her life. Flashback concludes. "I've always felt bad about leaving you, Naruto." Kushina continued, having finished telling the majority of her story. "Since I've been gone, the villagers will be free to do whatever they want to you. And who knows what they have in store for you. But, as I previously stated, I'm grateful that you're still alive after all these years. So, please understand, I never wanted to leave you, Naruto. I love you too much to even consider leaving you. You're my only son, so please accept my apologies.
She finished, raising her gaze to Naruto's face for the first time in minutes since telling her story.
Her eyes widened as she noticed Naruto's tears streaming down his face as he stared at his mother.
Why is he crying?
She wondered before realizing the blonde was crying over her own painful memory. Damn it. She was so helpless at the time. Kurama lamented for his former host and friend. If I had been with her at the time, I would have helped her. And maybe she would not have died. There was silence for a few minutes, except for Naruto's sobbing. Normally, this would be the time for Jiraiya or Hiruzen to comfort him, but they didn't. They just stood there like statues, silently watching Naruto let out all of his pent-up emotion. The blonde sniffed several times before wiping his tears away with his jacket. Although the tears had dried, his red-blooded eyes remained, and it was clear that they were still filled with sadness. I forgive you, Ka-san, he muttered weakly. The redhead's eyes widened even more as her mouth hung open, unable to comprehend what Naruto had just said. What? She asked, her voice trembling. Naruto cracked a small smile as his mood improved. I'm sorry for getting angry with you in the first place, Ka-san. He continued, rubbing the back of his head in embarrassment as he grinned. I just wanted to know the truth, and I figured getting all angry and tough would make you tell me. Silence reigned for a few seconds before Hashirama and Jiraiya's raucous laughter filled the room. Hiruzen chuckled slightly, while Tobirama simply closed his eyes, trying not to show emotion.
It didn't take long for Kushina to shake her head and chuckle softly, realizing what Naruto was saying to her. I get it now, she thought to herself.
He's not really mad at me, he could never be. I am so fortunate to have a son like Naruto. No, it's not like I'm still alive. As much as I would like to be his mother again, I can't because I'm already dead. But I guess this means he's over it. Even though I'm no longer in your life, there are still people like Jiraiya-sensei and Hiruzen-sensei around him who will help him. Ka-san, how about a hug? Naruto inquired, this time stretching his arms out. I'm sorry for earlier, I hope you can forgive me. He said cheerfully, all hints of sadness gone from his own voice. If it had been possible, she would have shed joyful tears right then and there, but that couldn't happen with an Edo Tensei like her. She responded by smiling warmly at her son and walking towards him. Naruto smiled as he noticed his mother smiling at him. I missed you, Ka-san. He exclaimed happily as she approached him, now within arm's length. I missed you too. Before she could continue, she abruptly came to a halt, her eyes widening, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow at her.
Kong FSA adamantine ceiling chains, she exhaled, causing Jiraiya, Hiruzen, Hashirama, and Tobirama to widen their eyes.
Oh no. Ruined a pleasant moment between mother and son. Jiraiya rushed towards the blonde and tackled him to the brick surface of the roof, while Kushina released dozens of golden chains from her own chakra and attacked the spot where Naruto was previously standing. After recovering from his shock, the boy looked at his mother with puzzled eyes. Jiraiya followed suit, bracing himself in case she struck again. Kushina turned her head slowly towards her son as the ceiling chains she had made retracted back towards her, ready to be used again. I'm sorry, Naruto, but it appears that I am your enemy today. She muttered weakly as Orochimaru emerged from behind the three coffins summoned earlier. Naruto growled as he saw the snake Sannin and realized he was controlling his mother's actions, as well as Tobirama's and Hashirama's. He'd completely forgotten about him after turning his attention to his mother after delivering a powerful punch to the man, but he should have known he wouldn't go down easily. "Well, that was certainly an interesting story, Kushina," said Orochimaru, evilly chuckling. "But I think we've heard enough," he continued, his gaze fixed on his former teacher and teammate. "Don't you think we should get right to the main event?" "Son of a bitch," growled the Kyuubi, glaring at Orochimaru with murderous intent. "Give him a serious ass beating for ruining a perfectly good moment between mother and son." "That jerk deserved it," he said, to which Naruto gave a silent nod. "Do you have no shame, Orochimaru?" Hiruzen yelled, his voice storming out, displaying his murderous intent. "Not only do you lead an invasion against your old home, but you also have the audacity to use 3 of the village's most respected ninjas as pawns for your own ends? When are you going to learn?" "Why don't we find out, sensei?" said the snake Sanin, spitting out the final word with venom. Meanwhile, after receiving his latest orders from his sensei, Sasuke Uchiha was running through the streets of the village. He was tasked with clearing every street corner of the sand and sound ninja who were still pushing the invasion. Since Kakashi claimed to have seen Gaara defeated outside of Konoha when the massive Ichibi vanished, he hypothesized that the enemy's forces had greatly diminished in overall strength due to the loss of a very powerful weapon. He directed Sasuke to gather a few of his genin comrades and ensure that all of the village's streets were secure. But, as is his wont, he flatly refused any assistance. Back in time a few minutes. "Did you see what I just saw, Kakashi?" Guy, who was standing beside his rival, friend, looking out at the outskirts of the village where the Ichibi had earlier vanished, asked. "Did the Ichibi reseal inside its host?" "I don't know, but that's definitely a good sign," Kakashi said, imagining Naruto triumphant over Sanagakure's own Gaara, which made him smile. "Without the Ichibi, the sand would be weakened, because I believe their tailed beast is their trump card in this invasion. They must have thought that because Gaara is a crazy psychopath, him turning into the Ichibi would be enough to bring the leaf down. However, we didn't." Guy grinned proudly and punched the air with his fist. "Kakashi, this is the power of youth. That is why Konoha will not be defeated so easily. Everyone has the flames of youth burning within them, and they are an eternal flame. They, like our hope and determination, will never be extinguished. I believe we are very close to victory now," Kakashi said, stroking his chin and ignoring Guy's remark. "But first and foremost, we must secure the village." He turned around and looked at Sasuke, who had been fighting alongside him since they had left the arena earlier. "Sasuke, I need you to go find at least 2 of your genin friends and work together to secure the village's streets. We can't help but wonder if some enemy ninjas are still bothering the regular villagers, and we need to be certain. Are you capable of doing that?" The Uchiha closed his eyes and turned around, both hands stuffed into his pockets. "Why should I need help?" he smugly replied. "I'll do it on my own. I'll show our adversary that the Uchiha is to be feared and not taken lightly." He finished with a small laugh, then dashed off to do what his teacher had told him to do. Flashback concludes. "Okay, I think this part is clear," Sasuke thought as he looked around the street with his Sharingan activated. Wiping the sweat from his brow, he deactivated his dojutsu and turned around to check the next street. "I'll have to make this quick if I want to," he was interrupted by a swarm of shuriken flying towards him. He barely avoided it by ducking because he didn't have his Sharingan activated. After that, he activated his dojutsu once more and stood up to confront his assailant. "You dare to face me, Uchi?" He couldn't finish his ramble when he saw the person in front of him. Kabuto? Yes, the person who just attempted to attack him was none other than Kabuto Yakushi, whom he had known about since the beginning of the Chunin exams, when the bespectacled man complained about the noise inside the classroom he was in, which included Sasuke. He also recognized him as the only genin who chose to withdraw from the 3rd phase of the exams. The Uchiha was perplexed and intrigued by his appearance right now. "How are you doing, Sasuke-kun?" he asked, his smile easily detected by the raven-haired boy. "Spill it, what brings you here?" Sasuke asked, snapping out of his shock and putting on a serious face while wielding his Sharingan. "How come you just attacked me? Are you a part of this invasion? Are you a sound supporter?" "Yes," Kabuto replied without hesitation, causing the Uchiha's eyes to widen. Sasuke immediately pulled out a kunai and glared at the sound nin in front of him, recalling his original mission. "I'll wipe that smile off your face," he yelled, charging towards Kabuto with murderous intent in his eyes. "You made the mistake of messing with Konoha and the Uchiha." Kabuto remained motionless, looking at Sasuke and blurting out his own response. "Why don't you come with us, Sasuke-kun?" he asked, his fake smile still on his face. This caused the Uchiha to come to a halt and raise an eyebrow in confusion. Sasuke shook his head and pointed accusingly at his foe, realizing what Kabuto had just asked him. "Why the hell should I accompany you? I admit that trying to play mind games with your opponent is a good strategy. But it's not going to work on me," he responded with venom in his voice. "We have the ability to grant you power, Sasuke-kun," said Kabuto, his smile having been replaced by a solemn expression. "Power? Sasuke-kun, I know what happened to your family. And we can give you power so you can exact your revenge on Itachi Uchiha." Following that last statement, Sasuke reminisced about Itachi murdering his entire clan. From the moment he showed him his father's dead body to the moment he left him in the middle of the night. As his eyes widened to the size of saucers, Kabuto's statement pulled him out of reality and into memory. As Kabuto felt Orochimaru's chakra on the seal at Sasuke's neck, his subconscious may have taken over his entire body. After briefly freezing in place, he began to shake in anger as his chakra flared off him. "Power," he muttered, his blood boiling. "Family," he continued, his fists clenched in fury. "Our revenge," he growled, his Sharingan subconsciously evolving into his Mangekyo Sharingan, the new eyes he received years ago after witnessing his mother's death at the hands of his own brother. "Itachi!" screamed the Uchiha out into the open, black markings spreading across his body from the cursed seal on his neck. Kabuto's eyes widened as he saw Sasuke's quick reaction to Itachi Uchiha's name, which immediately awakened the raven-haired boy's curse mark. According to the information he received, Kakashi Hatake was able to suppress the seal during the preliminary examinations for the third phase of the exams, and it would take some effort to unlock it again. After he recovered from his shock, the bespectacled man smirked, knowing that this would be easier than he had anticipated. Now that Sasuke is out of control, all he needs to do is knock him out and drag him back to Oto, where they can gain his allegiance. Seeing how the Uchiha reacted earlier, Kabuto deduced that Sasuke would do anything to exact revenge on Itachi, even walk away from his own village. His original mission in the invasion had been to retrieve Sasuke Uchiha for Orochimaru, and it would now be completed in a matter of moments. Except for the black markings on his body, the Uchiha in front of him resembled a Jinchuriki at the moment. "I didn't expect that," Kabuto said, looking down at the ground with an evil grin as his glasses reflected the sunlight off his eyes. "But it appears that did the trick," he said, looking up at Sasuke and quickly going through some seals. "Tiger horse rabbit rat dog. Now I just need to take you out," he exclaimed, his chakra forming into small blades that covered his hands. "Orochimaru-sama would be overjoyed to learn of your capture." But before he could charge at Sasuke, someone was already in front of him, shielding him with one arm while holding a kunai in the other. Kakashi Hatake was the name. "You'll have to go through me if you want my student," he said, narrowing his eyes at the sound nin in front of him. "Enough chit-chat," Orochimaru said, taking command of the 3 Edo Tensais he had summoned. "Get them," he said to Hiruzen, Jiraiya, Naruto, and the 4 bodyguards. Tobirama teleported over to Hiruzen's side and grabbed his student's shoulder before teleporting to another area on the rooftop they were standing on, despite their best efforts to resist the snake Sanin's control over them. Kushina charged towards Jiraiya, who had already jumped away to a safe distance, but cursed himself when he saw the habanero approaching him. Of course, he knew how powerful she was, and like his former teammate Tsunade Senju, she was definitely not someone you wanted to offend. Naruto was alone in battle because his pseudo-grandpa and godfather had vanished, and Hiruzen's bodyguards had fled to who knows where. I never thought I'd say it, but I'm glad I'll be fighting you, Uzumaki Naruto. Hashirama remarked with a huge grin, prompting Naruto to raise an eyebrow. Don't be shy, Naruto. I am your adversary, so treat me as such. You must seal me so that Orochimaru's plans do not succeed. He finished, then assumed a fighting stance.
Naruto said nothing, but instead nodded, adopting his own fighting stance.
Naruto vs Hashirama XXX. The two shinobis first looked each other down, observing each other's flaws. Of course, Naruto had done his research and knew exactly who he was up against. He would have preferred to fight Kushina instead because he knew his mother better than anyone, but he reasoned that his celestial powers would not stand a chance against the legendary abilities of the god of shinobi, Hashirama Senju. He also understood that being an Edo Tensei meant that the reincarnated person was weaker than when he or she was alive. As a result, he may have a chance to finish quickly so that he can assist Jiraiya and Hiruzen in their battles and, hopefully, have enough time to ambush Orochimaru. And by quickly, he might mean really quickly. Mokuton. Mokuri no Jutsu. Wood style. Wood dragon technique, yelled the first Hokage, summoning a wooden dragon that charged at Naruto. According to legend, Hashirama used this jutsu to restrain Madara Uchiha's 9 tails during their battle hundreds of years ago, and it was one of his trademark jutsus. Raisei, meteor, Naruto said as he flew towards his opponent with such speed that he easily evaded the long body of the wooden dragon and went straight to Hashirama. The Shoden's eyes widened when he saw him fly, because the last time he checked, it was impossible. Except for Madara's Susanoo, who has wings on its back, no other being in his memory can fly. Take this, yelled the blonde as he drew his arm back before punching Hashirama. Because his arm has been enhanced by his own meteor, this attack will undoubtedly obliterate the first Hokage and allow him to seal him. Fortunately, Hashirama was able to catch his intended attack with his 2 hands and quickly threw him over his shoulder, sending the blonde to the rooftop surface. Hashirama may be fighting someone with abilities he is unaware of, but he is capable of quickly adapting to any situation. You're going to have to try harder than that, young one. He grumbled, clicking his tongue. I already did, he replied, smirking. Hashirama raised an eyebrow before widening his eyes as he sensed another person approaching from behind him. When he turned around, he saw 2 Naruto clones running towards him. Uchtengan. Moru Susei. Space release. Blazing comet. Yelled one clone as his arms became engulfed in blue flames. Uchtengan. Shwakusei no Akari. Space release. Asteroid's wrath, screamed the other, causing a dozen meteor rocks to fall behind him before throwing his right arm out, sending it all to his opponent. Hashirama let go of the Naruto he was holding before turning his attention to the 2 clones he was facing. Mokuton. Daijirin no Jutsu, he explained, his left and right arms gradually transforming into countless sharp tree branches aimed at Naruto. The tree branches split apart and attacked him from all sides, easily disrupting the meteor rock that was about to strike him and defeating the clone that created them, poofing in a cloud of smoke. But the other one avoided being hit by destroying all the branches that dared to hit him with his enhanced hands, some of which also melted due to the sheer heat of the blue flames on his hands. It didn't take long for the clone to destroy all of the branches as a result of this strategy. Excellent work. I'm not sure how you managed to melt the branches, but it shows how powerful you are, Naruto. But let's see how you do with this," he remarked, surprised by how the blonde was able to counter his last attack, his arms returning to normal before going through a series of hand seals. Rat, dog, tiger, Mokutan's name is Mokujeki. Domed wall technique. Wood style. He said this as a swarm of wooden pillars rose from the ground on both sides of the approaching clone. The clone came to a halt in his tracks, looking at the pillars that joined together to form a dome with Naruto trapped inside. The Shoden paused for a moment, waiting for Naruto, who was inside the dome he had built, to respond. It wasn't long before he heard something that sounded like Naruto's voice. "Uchten. Tengoku no Kasen." Space release. Heavenly Ray, Hashirama grinned, knowing Naruto had figured out how to get out of his technique. But that expression was quickly washed away when he noticed a laser beam passing through his abdomen from behind him. He turned around and saw Naruto with a determined expression on his face, the laser beam emitted from his right index finger. "You truly are unique, Naruto Uzumaki," he said, smiling at the blonde. "Those eyes of yours are incredible. That's something I've never seen before." Before going through another batch of hand seals, he commented. "Ox dog dragon rat dog boar snake tiger, shuriken cage bunshin no jutsu." He screamed, pulling out a shuriken and throwing it at Naruto before hundreds of its own clones appeared, also heading towards the blonde. Naruto's eyes widened briefly as he saw many more copies of the shuriken that Hashirama had thrown before regaining his composure as he went through some hand seals. "Boar dog dragon bird hare boar serpent horse, Uchten, Kinboshi no I." He then breathed out a massive stream of fire towards the Hokage, easily overwhelming all the shurikens that the latter had just thrown. Naruto's counter to his attack caught the Shoden off guard. He may be an Edo Tensei who doesn't feel pain, but he could clearly see Naruto's fire was very powerful when his protective armor began to melt slowly by the second. Reacting quickly, he used another jutsu, unconsciously hoping it would hold up against the blonde's technique because it might melt as well. Mokutan. High no jutsu, a wooden dome formed around him, with a dragon's face on top. The slit down the middle indicated that Hashirama's defense could be exposed if Naruto tried hard enough. Naruto's attack came just as Hashirama's dome encircled him completely, and the battle between offense and defense began. To ensure that his opponent did not retaliate, the blonde continued to breathe out fire for half a minute, and he had to thank Kurama inwardly because apparently, using this technique for an extended period of time consumes a significant amount of his chakra. Hashirama's dome immediately began melting during the first few seconds that the flames burned through it, but he was able to keep it from melting for a long time by exerting more chakra into his technique. And because he was an Edo Tensei, he had unlimited chakra, so he could keep this going for as long as he needed. Naruto finally stopped his attack after a minute and panted lightly, his technique taking its toll on him. "Damn it," he grumbled as he noticed Hashirama's dome-like structure, which he assumed protected him from his fire technique. "So this is the first Hokage's power, huh? I need to step up my training even more then." He grinned, seeing that his jutsu had left its mark in the form of large burns on the wooden structure, which was struggling to stay put because the dome was healing itself from the damage it had received. Although Hashirama's wood style was extremely powerful, it was also known to be vulnerable to the fire element, specifically Madara Uchiha's techniques because the latter was the former's rival at the time. His Uchtengan was even more powerful than Madara's fire because it used flames from the hottest planet. On the bright side, it appears that I made quite a mark. Wait. I wonder. He then dashed towards the dome, passing through yet another set of seals, hoping that his plan would work in some way. Uchten. Sinaru Bakuf. Space release. Holy blast, he yelled, creating 2 energy beams on his hands as he jumped into the air, before throwing his 2 small but very powerful projectiles towards the wooden structure, destroying a large part of it. "There's more where that came from," he exclaimed, sending 2 more energy beams to Hashirama's dome, causing a large crack on its surface and causing Naruto to grin. "Here I come," he exclaimed, channeling his meteor jutsu into his legs, tenfold increasing their strength. A massive kick was enough to break down the wooden dome, causing the blonde to smile wide. "Okay, fine." Naruto, he was interrupted in his early celebration when he noticed 2 copies of the first Hokage inside the structure. "Uh-oh. Naruto, you've got to do better than that if you want to keep me. Hurry. I'm not sure how much longer you can hold out," said the middle one, presumably the real one, as he and the other 2 clones leapt to their feet and drew their arms back. Naruto's eyes widened in fear, and he quickly resorted to distraction. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Shadow clone technique," he exclaimed, creating 4 clones of himself beside him before charging at Hashirama's. A fierce taijutsu battle ensued between his and the Shodem's copies, with the former holding up fairly well, handling 2 Narutos at once. When he saw this, Naruto's brow furrowed in confusion. He wasn't sure he could win because he was up against the most powerful shinobi of his era, and he was also an Edo Tensei at the time, making it even more difficult. "Yeah, I seriously need to train even more after this," he thought to himself as he landed on the rooftop and watched his clones battle his enemy's 2 duplicates. "I was mistaken. Just because I have different abilities than everyone else doesn't mean I'm the strongest." An imaginary light bulb then appeared on top of his head. "Okay, I hope this plan works," he said as yellow light engulfed his entire body. The real Hashirama, like Naruto, was watching his clones battle Naruto's. He was clearly enjoying the fight right now, because a genin from the new generation of ninja can compete with a Kage-level shinobi like himself. Despite his interest in the battle, he was aware that he was an Edo Tensei at the time, as well as a tool being used by Konoha's enemy for his own evil purposes. He needed to be sealed in order to ensure the safety of the village. He turned his attention to the real Uzumaki Naruto after seeing that his clones could hold their own against him, but he was gone from the spot where he last saw the blonde. Where has he gone? Hashirama was perplexed before he heard a voice behind him. Uchtengan. Dosei no Ringu. Space release. Saturn rings. Hashirama turned around, his eyes widening as he saw Naruto behind him, holding 2 energy discs in each hand, a solemn expression on his face. The Shodem smiled, knowing Naruto had outwitted him and demonstrated his strength. "Well done, Naruto," he thought to himself as he noticed the blonde was now only inches away from him. "Your eyes are unique. Fight hard for your dream." Because he was cut off from his thoughts when he felt his arms move on their own. "Oh no," he exclaimed, preventing Naruto's attack from reaching him by slapping both of the blonde's arms away from him, causing all of the energy discs he created to be redirected at the purple barrier instead. Naruto's eyes widened as he froze in place, astounded by how quickly Hashirama reacted, rendering his planned sneak attack ineffective. The first Hokage exclaimed in horror as his arm drew back in an attempt to punch the young boy. "Get out of the way, Naruto. I can't stop myself any longer," he screamed, hoping the blonde would notice and react in time. But only just barely. Naruto closed his eyes, gritted his teeth, and raised both of his arms to block Hashirama's incoming attack, but his defense failed completely because his full strength wasn't used, sending him stumbling back, but he managed to stay on his feet through sheer willpower. When he opened his eyes, he saw the Shodem with a concerned expression on his face, but his current actions indicated otherwise. The blonde closed his eyes again, hoping that his opponent's next attack would be less painful. Punch, punch, punch. Kick, kick, kick. After Hashirama's quick but powerful chain of taijutsu attacks, Naruto was blown away and sent flying. For the first Hokage, the title, God of Shinobi, meant something special. The blonde managed to stop himself from going any further by planting his feet firmly on the rooftop tiles, and after a few seconds, he finally came to a halt on his knees, exhausted. His eyes remained closed as he struggled to get back on his feet, but his feet were failing him, only managing to balance on one knee, indicating that he wouldn't last long. It didn't take long for him to hear the sound of someone running in his direction. "Don't get too excited about your celestial powers, Kit. They're not going to work all the time," said Kurama. The Shodan had no control over his own actions by this point, and only his face expressed sympathy for Naruto. As he ran towards the boy, he decided to encourage him despite the fact that he was clearly at a disadvantage against him at the time. "Naruto, don't give up just yet. Demonstrate your worthiness to be Hokage. Isn't that your dream?" he exclaimed, unconsciously weaving a slew of hand seals in the process. His wood clone jutsu's hand seals. Tiger, dog, and snake, the Hokage isn't one to give up easily. He continued, now only a few meters from Naruto. The blonde Uzumaki's eyes widened as he clapped his hands together before leaping 4 feet into the air, bringing his own feet up with him. Hashirama's eyes widened in surprise at Naruto's quick reaction. The boy then redirected his meteor jutsu towards his legs and feet before catching the Shodan in a devastating dropkick that obliterated his head due to Naruto's leg strength. However, because he was an Edo Tensei, Hashirama's destroyed head began to reform quickly, but as soon as he felt he could see again, he noticed someone from behind him holding his wrist. He was wondering who it was but had a feeling it was Naruto when he felt his back being pushed and turned around to see that it was indeed Naruto who was behind him. The blonde had a furious expression on his face, and Hashirama could tell he was dead set on defeating him right now. Naruto drew the Shodan towards him, holding his wrist for his Rainmaker jutsu. "Rain-MK. Rainmaker," he yelled, catching his opponent in the throat with his devastating lariat, hitting Hashirama in the throat, instantly knocking him down, but Naruto didn't let go of his wrist yet. It didn't take him long to yank Hashirama back to his feet, his grip on the latter's wrist still firm. The Shodan was so dizzy from Naruto's last hit that he didn't notice the blonde hit him with another Rainmaker, sending him back down on the roof's surface. Naruto was panting heavily, but he still gripped Hashirama's wrist before pulling him up one more time to send the message loud and clear. Yes, this is exactly how he defeated Neji back then, and it is also how he will defeat the god of Shinobi right now. Naruto clenched his fist tightly, putting all of his strength into it, and gritted his teeth once Hashirama was back on his feet. "I'm going to be the greatest Hokage ever. It's true," he proudly declared before pulling in his opponent for the last Rainmaker, but much to his surprise, Hashirama ducked under his lariat and lost his grip on the first Hokage's wrist due to too much power exerted into it. Naruto quickly turned around to face the Shodan, who was about to retaliate with his own punch, but in a beautiful dance of destruction, the blonde ducked under the punch and went behind him, clutching Hashirama's wrist once more. "I'll make it rain," he screamed, pushing Hashirama on his back again, forcing the latter to turn around before being pulled back towards the boy. "Rain-MK. Rainmaker," he exclaimed, successfully hitting Hashirama on the throat once more, and due to the strength of his arm, the Shodan's reincarnated head was destroyed once more as Naruto fell to his knees and panted heavily in exhaustion. The Hokage's body lay beside him, waiting for the head to be reformed so it could be used again. Naruto vs. Hashirama XXX, ending. The Hokage felt he could no longer move his body after Hashirama's head reformed. When he opened his eyes, he saw that he was bound with bandages on his arms and legs, and that a long piece of material was gradually covering his entire body from head to foot. The Shodan Hokage smiled inwardly as he realized Naruto had defeated him in battle and that he was about to be sealed. What a kid, he thought to himself before looking at Naruto, who was panting in exhaustion on his knees. Yes, he has so much potential. To think that despite being at a disadvantage due to his chakra levels and durability, The bandages had now covered the majority of his head, leaving only his eyes, nose, and mouth visible. Since no one could see him, Hashirama closed his eyes and smiled at the blonde's figure as the bandages covered his face. Young one, well done. Fulfill your dream of becoming Hokage. I know you have the strength and potential. And you proved it to me in our battle. Use your powers to protect those you care about, just like you said. I'm grateful to have had the chance to fight you myself, lad. He finished, his body now completely bandaged before one of Hiruzen's bodyguards placed a sealing tag on it. After hearing Hashirama's voice inside his mind, Naruto's eyes widened. Thank you. The Hokage said in the boy's thoughts, prompting the blonde to smile slowly, knowing exactly what the Shodan meant by those two words. Wow, Kit, I think that was a 5-star classic. Excellent work. 1 down, 2 more to go, Kurama said from within his mind, with a wide grin and a thumbs up, replenishing his host's chakra and healing Naruto of his injuries. Thank you, I appreciate it. Naruto thought to himself, his body returning to normal. Slowly regaining his strength, he ran towards Hiruzen and Tobirama, ready to assist in his pseudo-fight. Grandfathers, but it appeared that he was too late, as Hiruzen began to outperform his former teacher in their duel. The blonde raised both his eyebrows in surprise, but figured he shouldn't be because the Sandaime was a formidable opponent in his own right. He then turned towards Jiraiya, where he had last seen him fighting with his mother, but when he did, he found the old pervert doing quite well on his own. He smiled inwardly, relieved that he didn't have to deal with the other 2 Edo Tensais, because fighting Hashirama had worn him out, and he didn't want to tire himself out any further. When he saw that everything was in order, he turned his gaze to Orochimaru, who was watching his former sensei fight the Nidaime. It appears that I underestimated their abilities.
Orochimaru reflected as he watched Hiruzen battle Tobirama, who was an Edo Tensai at the time.
I should have expected this. Sarutobi has no idea when to give up, does he? Now that Naruto-kun has defeated Hashirama Senju in battle, he'll be receiving assistance in dealing with Tobirama. Perhaps now would be the ideal time to make a tactical retreat. On the bright side, I did gather some information about Kushina Uzumaki and her son, Naruto Uzumaki. He chuckled evilly to himself. Yes, he will be an excellent host. He then took command of Tobirama and Kushina, ordering them to stop. When they did, Jiraiya and Hiruzen raised an eyebrow in confusion before Orochimaru's evil laughter filled the room. Kukakukuku, okay, I'll admit it. He said, smirking at everyone. It appears that we made a mistake in planning the invasion because you were prepared for us, so for that, sensei. He trailed off. But keep in mind that Konoha may be standing today, but it will fall tomorrow. I hope to see you all soon. He finished and was about to run away, but before he could, he felt his right wrist being held off and he couldn't even take a step. When he turned around, his eyes widened as he saw Naruto gripping his wrist with a smirk of his own. Not so quickly. Naruto remarked as he drew Orochimaru closer to him. Rain-MK. Rainmaker, he yelled, slamming his signature taijutsu technique into the snake Sannin, knocking him to the rooftop tiles. Naruto took a few deep breaths in and out before helping Orochimaru to his feet. Here's another one. He exclaimed before luring Orochimaru back towards him and catching him with another Rainmaker, this time with a lot of chakra in it. Orochimaru screamed in agony as he felt even sharper raindrops hit his neck than the first time. Naruto let go of his wrist and breathed in and out several times more after the technique to catch his breath. He examined the snake Sannin's neck and noticed that his previous attack had left its mark in the form of small holes on his neck, owing to the sharper raindrops on Naruto's arm at the time. Roaring triumphantly, he forced Orochimaru to his feet and went behind him, intending to finish it off with one last attack. Naruto grabbed his opponent's wrist and pushed him in the back, causing Orochimaru to turn around and face him. "Suck on this, you asshole," he yelled, drawing his arm back before pulling Orochimaru in for one last lariat. However, just as his attack struck Snake Sanin's neck, a large snake emerged from his mouth and into the open. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as the large snake began slithering away, before its mouth opened and Orochimaru emerged, slithering like a snake himself. The blonde was too stunned to respond. Orochimaru turned around to face Naruto and grinned evilly after removing his entire body from the snake. Naruto noticed that the small holes on his opponent's neck had vanished. He looked at the one he had attacked and saw that it was now nothing more than skin. He gritted his teeth as he returned his gaze to the snake Sanin, muttering, "Like a snake, shedding your skin. I wish I could stay and talk, but I have to get going." As he began to flee, Orochimaru made a remark. As he brought his two hands together in the hand seal of his trademark jutsu, the blonde's eyes widened for a brief second before narrowing again. "I'm not going to let you get away." "Shadow clone technique, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," he yelled, causing 4 clones of himself to appear beside him. "Don't let him get away," exclaimed the real one, pointing to Orochimaru's retreating figure, and the 4 others immediately activated their Uchtengan before flying at breakneck speed towards the snake Sanin. Orochimaru had no idea what had happened. He was running away from battle 1 second, and then he was being held down by 4 Naruto clones the next. "Let go of me," he yelled, desperately trying to get away from the blonde. Blondes, to be precise. He attempted a substitution with a log but was unable to do so because it required both of his arms. Orochimaru hissed at him when he saw another Naruto, possibly the real one, walking towards him at a normal pace. His neck then extended towards the real one and aimed for his neck, attempting to plant the cursed seal on him as well before Naruto did something he didn't know about. The blonde saw what he was up to and immediately directed his meteor at his right arm before unleashing a vicious right hook on the Orochimaru. Its strength was sufficient for him to return to his original state. However, his cheek had become bruised as a result of Naruto's punch, which was healing slowly by the second. He can be reckless at times, but he also has his own tricks. "You damn pedophile, not just Sasuke, but also me?" Naruto remarked sarcastically. "You need to broaden your palate," he said before seizing both of Orochimaru's arms, much to the latter's surprise. "This is it for you." He then closed his eyes and concentrated his chakra on his arms. "I haven't tried it yet, but you should be prepared. Gravity seal, Jiryoku Fuin." The blonde screamed, widening Orochimaru's eyes. "Activate," he said, snapping his eyes open, and the snake Sanin screamed in agony as he felt his chakra on his arm being sucked away. Naruto maintained his focus on his opponent's arms while focusing the strength of the gravity that he was controlling. This went on for a half-minute until all the chakra from Orochimaru's arms had vanished and was now on the blonde Uzumaki's hands, kept at bay by all the gravity in there. "Transfer," he yelled, causing all the chakra that had accumulated on his hands to flow to his 2 eyes and absorb it. This time, the situation was reversed. Naruto screamed in agony, while Orochimaru stared at him, perplexed by their reversal of roles. When he sucked away the chakra, it took him 30 seconds for all of the chakra on his hands to be absorbed by his Uchtengan. As soon as it was completed, Naruto let go of Orochimaru's arms, and the 4 clones he had created earlier vanished in clouds of smoke. Snake Sanin knelt down, unable to feel his arms for some reason. He looked up and noticed Naruto was dizzy, swaying back and forth like a drunk person. A massive headache overtook the blonde as he raised his hand to massage his temple. Naruto hissed in pain before dropping to both knees and slumping forward in front of Orochimaru, unconscious.
That's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.